She hit the pavement hard when he shoved her out of the car. The late autumn wind pushed across the empty stretch of road as she tried to stand, but Luis Sierra grabbed her again, dragging her toward the trunk. Evelyn Colon had argued with him before, but never like this. She was 17, pregnant, and living in his cramped Jersey City apartment after months of fighting with her family about her relationship with him. That afternoon, neighbors heard them shouting, then silence, then the sound of the car pulling away. No one saw what happened inside it. By nightfall, Evelyn was gone. Sierra told anyone who asked that she had walked out. He said she was young, emotional, and tired of responsibility. He never called her family to report her missing. Her relatives waited days, then weeks, hoping she would return home the way teenagers sometimes did when they needed space. When they finally went to the local police, they learned there was little they could do without proof of danger. The report stayed local. It was never entered into national databases. No one connected her disappearance to anything outside New Jersey. 3 months later, on December 20th, 1976, a fisherman on the Lehigh River in Pennsylvania felt his hook snag on something heavy. When he pulled, the line strained against the current. What came up wasn't debris. It was a soaked suitcase, bloated with water and lodged against the riverbank. He dragged it ashore and tried to lift it upright. The zipper burst, and a human arm slid out. State police arrived within minutes and secured the scene along the frigid shoreline. The suitcase was beige vinyl, the kind sold in discount department stores. Inside was the dismembered torso of a young woman, wrapped in plastic and torn bedding. The coroner noticed immediately that she was pregnant, nearly full term. Detectives marked tire tracks on the embankment and searched for footprints, but the mud only gave partial impressions. There was no ID, no clothing that offered clues, and no sign of how far the body had traveled downstream. The next morning, officers extended the search along the river. Miles away, wedged under a tangle of branches, they found a second suitcase. When they opened it, they found the victim's legs, severed at the upper thigh. The cuts were jagged, made by a saw and done quickly. A third suitcase surfaced days later. Inside were the woman's arms and smaller personal items, mostly ruined by water. The brutality of the dismemberment stunned even seasoned investigators. They knew they were dealing with an exceptionally violent offender. The victim had long dark hair, a small frame, and appeared to be in her late teens. She had dental work, suggesting she had lived in the United States for years, possibly raised in a working-class family. Forensic examiners determined she had been strangled before being dismembered. The unborn baby girl was listed as a second homicide victim, but had no identifying traits that could help. With no name, no matching missing person report, and no unique belongings to trace, police labeled her Beth Doe. Detectives released composite drawings across multiple states. No family came forward. No school recognized her. No hospitals reported a missing pregnant teen. The case grew colder by the month. By spring of 1977, her remains were buried under the name given to her by investigators who had run out of leads. Over the years, new detectives inherited the case and tried to push it forward. They re-examined evidence, interviewed long-retired officers, and even checked carnival and migrant worker routes, thinking she might have traveled seasonally. Nothing matched. DNA testing in the late 1990s confirmed the baby was biologically hers, but didn't connect to any databases. When facial reconstruction technology improved, investigators released updated artwork in hopes someone would recognize the girl with soft features and dark eyes. Again, no one did. By the 2000s, only a handful of cold case detectives still talked about the Lehigh River suitcases. They kept the boxes of evidence on a shelf, refusing to let them fade away. When forensic genealogy exploded into the national spotlight, they sent her DNA profile to genealogical databases, hoping distant relatives might surface. It took time, and many potential leads went nowhere, but eventually a cluster of genetic matches pointed toward a family with deep Puerto Rican roots, many of whom had lived in New Jersey through the 1970s. Investigators mapped the family tree, working through birth records, marriage certificates, and long-forgotten addresses. They narrowed potential identities to a few young women who would have been teenagers in 1976. One stood out, a girl named Evelyn Colon, who had quietly disappeared from Jersey City around the same time. She had been pregnant. She had been living with her boyfriend. She had never been seen again. Detectives tracked down her surviving siblings. They remembered Evelyn as a shy girl who had tried her best to keep peace in a crowded household. They said she had left school early to work at a sewing factory and had fallen into a rocky relationship with Sierra, who promised to take care of her. When she vanished, he insisted she had left on her own. The family had searched for her for years, but without official records or media coverage, the case died before it ever started. When investigators collected DNA samples from Evelyn's siblings, the match was immediate and definitive. After 45 years, Beth Doe finally had her real name, Evelyn Colon. The discovery reopened everything. Detectives re-interviewed Sierra, who had since moved out of New Jersey and lived an unremarkable life elsewhere. They found contradictions in his old statements and cracks in his timeline. With modern forensic evidence and Evelyn's confirmed identity, they pieced together what had happened. Evelyn had been killed in New Jersey, dismembered, and transported across state lines to be dumped in the Lehigh River. Sierra had remained silent the entire time. Police arrested him in 2021. The charges included the murder of Evelyn and the killing of her unborn daughter. For Evelyn's family, it was the first moment they could speak her name without wondering if she might still be alive somewhere. They reclaimed her remains and buried her under her true identity, surrounded by relatives who had spent nearly half a century grieving in uncertainty. The case that began with 3 suitcases drifting down a Pennsylvania river ended with a name, a family, and a long-delayed measure of justice. Evelyn had not run away. She had not abandoned her life. She had been a victim whose story was hidden for decades until science finally caught up and revealed the truth. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories if you dare.